Good evening to you. I'm Danilo Evangelista, and welcome to our tropical weather outlook for October 22nd, Wednesday, 2025. We have a lot of things to go over today, especially on Tropical Storm Melissa, which is continuing to churn in the Atlantic right now, and things are starting to get serious here in the Caribbean. This is really beginning to look like a big time storm that, to be completely honest with you, I had a feeling was possible from the very, very beginning, and I will go over more in depth what I mean in a moment. But let's start off by looking at the latest information by the National Hurricane Center as of the 5 p.m. advisory. Maximum sustained winds at 50 miles per hour, a central pressure of 1,000 millibars. So it's holding steady right now. And as I'll show you with the satellite in a little bit, it is not yet at the moment where atmospheric conditions are favorable enough for this to start aligning in terms of its vertical structure. It's still dealing with a lot of shear right now. But trust me, especially as this moves very slowly here over the next several days in the Caribbean, things will begin to change. Environmental conditions will start to become much more conducive. And once it does, it'll have a whole lot of very, very warm sea surface temperatures. And I've been talking about that quite a bit over the last several weeks. The Caribbean has just been completely untapped for the entire season. It was just only a matter of time before things would come together at the right place at the right time. And it is increasingly likely that that is what's going to be the case with Melissa, especially that it is moving very slowly. The movement right now is west northwest at 2 miles per hour, and that's pretty much going to be what the case will be here throughout the Caribbean over the next 5 to 7 days. And this might end up pretty disastrously, especially in the Central Caribbean here. We might be talking about a monster in the making. But again, I'll go more in depth into that in just a little bit. Here's the latest, though, on the Eastern Pacific because there is activity happening right now there. There is a wave, and this is to the southwest of Mexico, going to stay away from the Mexican coastline, and it might develop. We'll see what happens here, but it looks like we might get another storm in the Pacific, but luckily, once again, southwest of the Mexican coastline and probably will stay away from the Mexican coastline. So don't worry, don't have to worry about any major impacts here in the Eastern Pacific. It is all going to be about focusing on the Atlantic right now for at least the next week. And of course, the main target of what we are watching is Melissa. And this is the latest satellite imagery of Melissa in the Caribbean right now. And as you can still see, disheveled right now because there's still a lot of strong wind shear over top of the storm, especially coming from the west, moving from west to east here. It's not yet favorably stacked onto the upper level anticyclone that eventually will develop over the top of this and eventually allow this to very quickly strengthen, especially as this continues to kind of nudge northward and then eventually will head westward here. And actually, I'll show you that with the National Hurricane Center track right now. And it pretty much does that. It continues on a northerly, maybe northwesterly track, slightly, north-northwest track for the next several days. But then eventually, as we get towards the weekend, this will begin to take that turn to the west. That ridge that will be over the southwestern United States will begin to build. And it's looking like this is in a position that, unlike the GFS model from a few days ago when this had it slamming directly into the island of Hispaniola, it's going to be trapped under the ridge while it's still in the Caribbean. That is just going to be forced to kind of dilly-dally here and move very, very slowly throughout the central and eventually into the Western Caribbean. And as it does that, it will rapidly intensify. In fact, the National Hurricane Center already beginning to hint at that. By Saturday, they forecast this will become a hurricane. By Sunday, they forecast this will become a major hurricane. And I believe this point here at day 5, 2 p.m. Monday, the National Hurricane Center officially is forecasting Category 4 intensity at day 5. And so this will very, very quickly ramp up and I will not even be shocked if it ramps up even quicker from that. The National Hurricane Center usually does not do that well at predicting intensity, especially rapid intensification, but that is one area that most people, generally tend to not be good at because these storms, when it comes to rapid intensification, they've proven time and time again, oh boy, do they ramp up quickly and catch a lot of people by surprise. It's, one of the many areas that hurricane forecasting still needs to improve in. But by the way, there are hurricane watches still in effect for Haiti and the DR. And maybe as this continues to kind of nudge to the west, as we've seen over the last several tracks, maybe we might see these watches here downgraded for Haiti and portions of the DR. But I definitely think that we probably will get some of these watches upgraded here in Jamaica. I will not be surprised in a few days if we see a hurricane watch, if not even a hurricane warning, because Melissa will be not far south of Jamaica, and I'm not sure we'll have a direct landfall on Jamaica, but this is going to take a westerly dive, and this, at least by looking at the track, this definitely looks closer to Jamaica than it does, especially to Haiti and the DR. So that's what I personally expect. But why are we going to have rapid intensification, and why is the ceiling honestly the sky? The sky is the limit with what's going to happen in the Western Caribbean. The main thing is number one, conditions are going to become much more favorable. We're going to see wind shear lessen quite a bit over the Caribbean over the next several days, and it looks like that now Melissa will kind of hang around here in the Caribbean, and then eventually nudge west. And again, I just showed you the National Hurricane Center track, and it does that, and it's going to do so over sea surface temperatures that are very, very, very warm. Here's the latest NOAA Coral Reef Watch sea surface temperature anomaly chart. Virtually the entire Caribbean is at least a degree Celsius above normal in sea surface temperature anomalies, and that's because, as I said before, the entire Caribbean has not been tapped at all this entire hurricane season. We've had no strong storms in the Caribbean. All of the activity has been off the southeast and in the general Atlantic region here, especially in between Bermuda and the Bahamas. And as you can see there, we have much cooler sea surface temperature anomalies now, thanks to the heat that has been taken out of the ocean by the activity we've had. And that's kind of the number one purpose of hurricanes, is to transport heat away from the oceans and into the atmosphere. It's kind of like a balancing mechanism that Mother Nature has, and that's going to be in full force here in the Caribbean. It's not just sea surface temperature anomalies. We also have the La Nina here in the equatorial Pacific, and you just know what that does to enhance favorable conditions, especially in the Caribbean in the month of October. Sea surface temperatures themselves, here's a look at them, and virtually the entire Caribbean, even where Melissa is right now, actual sea surface temperatures are at least in the 30s. We even have a few readings here, one just south of Cuba here of 31 degrees Celsius, but for the most part, in the entire path of Melissa, it'll be dealing with, or she, since it's a female name, will be dealing with 30 degrees Celsius waters. But most importantly, look at the tropical cyclone heat potential, and I mentioned this to you several days ago. And just look at how much warmth we have here in terms of tropical cyclone heat potential throughout the Caribbean. And what this is pretty much the measurement of heat potential in the ocean below the surface. So pretty much all of the potential heat and the depth of the warm water in the ocean, and just look at how much we have of it, especially in the Caribbean. A lot of values here towards the upper end of the scale. We even have a few patches, which areas see values topping the scale. So bottom line, we have very, very warm sea surface temperatures. And we also, because of that, have a lot of very warm sea surface temperatures that extend well below the surface. So a lot of heat in the ocean. And when that matches up with favorable atmospheric conditions, it's all a matter of everything coming together, right place at the right time. And that is pretty much what's going to happen here with Melissa. And it's summed up just by looking at the hurricane models today. And I'm going to show you both the HAFS A and the HAFS B, but let's start off with the HAFS A. And I'm just going to take you in time here over the next several days. You know, Melissa struggles for about a day or two, still has to deal with shear coming from the west, and the struggles to align properly with its low and mid-level center, but it seems like it begins to do so and develops a nice small compact core here roughly as we get towards the end of the week and into the weekend. And then this begins to rapidly intensify just south of Jamaica Saturday and Sunday. And from there, it just continues. And as we get in towards early next week, the HAFS model brings Melissa all the way down to 903 millibars. And I can tell you for damn sure that that is certainly a Category 5 hurricane. Now, I'm not saying that this will happen, but first of all, let me just show you here what the HAFS B model has. And let me bring you to the 12Z run because the 18Z is not run yet. But I'm just going to show you here. HAFS B shows the same thing. In fact, they bring this down to 884 millibars. So that's pretty much as strong as Hurricane Wilma, which was the strongest hurricane on record in the Atlantic. And I'm not saying that that's going to happen, but I mentioned this on Twitter earlier today, and by the way, if you've not followed me on Twitter yet, please make sure to do so at Danilo Evangelista on Twitter or X or whatever the hell you call it. But the hurricane models were the first models that pretty much got Hurricane Milton spot on, well before anybody even thought that Milton was going to become a Category 5 hurricane. The hurricane models, specifically, not just all the hurricane models, but specifically the HAFS A and the HAFS B, and both of the models show that Melissa is going to deepen very dramatically here over the Caribbean and potentially become a top level intense hurricane here in the Western Caribbean. And that's just what happens in the Caribbean, especially with conditions that we have in late October. The Caribbean is the prime place that is favored by climatology. And just, I showed you everything we have here today, or everything we have in place right now. Very warm sea surface temperature anomalies, lots of heat potential below the ocean in the Caribbean. And I will also say that that's also because the Caribbean is the deepest part of the ocean of the Atlantic as a whole, especially the Western Caribbean. So there's a lot more heat that is able to build up in the Caribbean anyway. And Melissa is going to track pretty much directly over those very, very warm sea surface temperature anomalies. And let me actually show you here the HAFS B, the parent model, because this actually gives a wide view showing, the entire Caribbean and the surrounding area that Melissa will be in. And I'm actually going to do this so I can show you what the upper level winds look like. And I'm just going to illustrate, obviously right now, dealing with a bunch of higher, stronger upper level winds. Not very much in a favorable wind pattern yet. Still dealing with a lot of shear, but obviously as this moves very, very very, very slowly throughout the Caribbean, moves a little bit north, and then eventually begins to nudge its way to the west. It starts to, settle itself in very, very weak and slow upper level winds. And first of all, that causes it to move very slow. But secondly, won't have to deal with wind shear anymore. And then because of that, you start to see we have an upper level anticyclone take place, and that pretty much is the winds here in the upper levels set themselves up so there is a outflow channel, meaning winds are moving away from the storm. They're moving away from the center of the storm, and that allows for a hurricane to breathe. And then eventually this just evolves into a absolute powerhouse look of the upper level winds here. Look at that. Multiple outflow channels here. And this almost begins to develop its own sort of like barrier in the upper level winds. And that's just an indication as to how strong the storm is. You can even start to see its wind field appear, represented here in the upper level wind. And that's just how crazy the HAFS model gets when it comes to showing what might happen here with Melissa. And Ryan Maui talks about it. The 18Z hurricane models are still baking in the oven, but do you think we could get a 870s millibar solution? So probably he's saying that he believes that the 18Z model run might be even stronger than what the 12Z model run was. And he goes on to talk, he talks about the 12Z model sustained winds are at 170 knots with gusts to 200 knots, and he jokes that that's Category 7, and obviously Category 7 doesn't exist, but 170 knots maximum sustained winds, and he's saying that that's what the HAFS B model shows, which is the model solution that I'm showing you here. Extremely favorable upper level environment, and boy, this could get very, very crazy here in the Caribbean over the next several days. And it's kind of what I've been warning would happen. And I said that, things are very favorable in the Caribbean. We have a La Nina in place. It's only a matter of time. And I also said earlier in the season, it's only a matter of time before things start getting very active. And we obviously saw the burst of activity that we saw late last month and then into earlier this month. Now, thankfully, it stayed out to sea, but Melissa will definitely not stay out to sea. It's going to be in the Caribbean, threatening places like Haiti, DR, and especially Jamaica and Cuba. And boy, I'm going to tell you, Cuba will have to watch out very, very closely here over the next week or so as Melissa continues to meander in the Caribbean, and we'll see what happens. But the potential with this is very, very high. It's looking very likely now that this will become a major hurricane. How strong it gets, though, is what is yet to be seen. But just by looking at the sea surface temperatures and just showing you what the hurricane models show, and I bring up specifically the HAFS A and the HAFS B model because they are hurricane models, meaning that the way the models, the dynamics of the model is specifically set up to calculate for the environment of hurricanes. That's why they're called hurricane models, because they're specifically made to predict the intensity and the environment for hurricanes. So when they show a very crazy solution like 880 millibars, that's crazy, but I would not completely 100% write that off. And again, we're just going to have to watch and see how things play out here over the next several days in the Caribbean. But one thing is for sure, Melissa is shaping up to be probably quite a monster here in the Atlantic that we probably will remember for decades to come. With that being said, I'm going to end it off for this evening's video. But don't worry, I kind of left on a, very dark moment saying that Melissa might be a very crazy storm that we're going to remember for decades to come. But don't worry, we're going to be watching this very, very closely throughout this upcoming week. I'm going to be posting videos every single day, like I've been doing so far. So make sure to stay tuned for another video coming tomorrow. And again, make sure to follow me on Twitter at Danilo Evangelista. I'm going to be posting updates, reposting tweets and posts that I find very interesting, like from people like Ryan Maui. So make sure to follow me on Twitter as well. But with that being said, I'm going to end it off for this evening's video. Hope you enjoyed it. Stay safe. Enjoy the rest of your evening. And I will see you back here tomorrow.